I do believe that we are live. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. My name is Chris Evers, and if you have held on for this program, I really appreciate it, guys. I'm an animal guy. I'm not a tech guy. So I'm very happy that we're online together. Those of you that have been patient and stuck around, thank you very much. Those that had to go, hopefully they'll come back and see the program later. Welcome to Animal Embassy. My name is Chris Evers. This is my buddy Sydney. He's my wingman at the moment. Sydney is an eclectus parrot and one of the many different animals that I've rescued and adopted in my life. I can't even tell you how many different animals I've rescued, some of them crossing the road. And why did the turtle cross the road? To get to the other side, of course, just like the chicken, right? The reason why they might have needed to cross the road, that's hard to say. But it's safe to say the road is no place for a toad. The road is no place for a frog. The road is no place for a turtle or a kid for that matter, right? So kids, if you ever see an animal that is in the middle of the road, that's not an animal for you to save, only if you can do something safely, should you do it, right? The road can be a dangerous place. Kids, the program today is called The Tale of Two Tales. Some of you grown-ups and library folks out there might recognize that that's a little bit of a play on a book that you kids might read someday, A Tale of Two Cities. You're going to need some time for that one. It's a long book. Kids, my job is to rescue and adopt animals. Sydney is one of the many animals that I have adopted. And I would say that I rescued him too. For about 5 years, poor Sydney was living in a cage and did not get to come out very often. The family got upset with him when he would scream. But why was he screaming? Because he wanted somebody to love him and give him attention. Birds travel in flocks oftentimes. Kids, can you say the word flock? A flock of birds is like a family group, extended family, right? Grandmas, grandpas, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, cousins, friends. That's what a flock could be made of. Like a herd of animals, very similar, right? But when we talk about a flock, we're talking about birds, and we talk about tails. Sydney's got 2 tails. Wait a second, how could an animal have 2 tails? Well, he does, because Sydney has a tail that helps him to fly. He has tail feathers, beautiful tail feathers, I might add. Sydney also has a tail just like you and just like me. Now, wait a second. Do we have tails, boys and girls? Yes, we do. Everybody has a tail. And my tail extends all the way across the country. My tail extends all the way across the ocean to Africa. My tail extends all the way into the jungles of India, the jungles of Brazil. Kids, I travel all over the world. I like to explore. I explore because I want to learn. I want to learn about animals, and I want to learn about my own kind. Because kids, you are like me. But we're not the same, are we? No, because everybody is different. And one of the things that Sydney and I want to help people to do is recognize that being different is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. But you know what? Because I loved all animals as a kid. I loved frogs. I loved toads. I loved salamanders. I loved snakes. I loved snapping turtles. I love parrots and bunny rabbits too, because kids, I love all of the animals, and I hope you do too. And if not yet, hopefully by the end of this program, you will. So kids, when I say that I have a tail and that you have a tail, of course, I don't mean a tail like what you're about to see. We do have a tail, and mine is longer than yours, for sure. But we don't have a tail like this, do we? No, this is a chameleon, kids. And this chameleon is called a panther chameleon. And panther chameleons are one of, I think, the most famous lizards in the world. Now, I'm not going to say that he's my favorite, because he certainly is not. Because I don't pick favorites. And kids, I don't want to ask you what your favorite animal is, because I don't want kids to pick favorites, right? Just like parents don't pick their favorite child and teachers don't pick their favorite students. A tale of two tales. This guy's got 2 tails himself. I want you guys to love all of the animals. Now, one of the reasons why I love this chameleon is because chameleons can change their color. That's cool. One of the reasons I love this chameleon is because he can look forward and backward at the same time. He can look up and down at the same time. He can look left and right at the same time. Kids, we can't do that. But why does he? Think about that. Why can the chameleon, or why would the chameleon want to look in two different directions at the same time? Well, let's just say that this chameleon was hunting for a cricket or a grasshopper. And if this chameleon was hunting for a cricket or a grasshopper, this chameleon would want to be looking forward to see the cricket or the grasshopper, right? But this chameleon might also want to be looking backward at the same time. Who would the chameleon be looking for when he looks backward? You might be thinking that the chameleon might be looking for a predator, right? Now, chameleons are predators, but there are also predators that will eat chameleons. So while the chameleon is hunting for the cricket, now watch very carefully, kids. While the chameleon is hunting for the cricket, well, the chameleon may be being hunted by somebody else. Watch, 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 watch. Here we go. Oh, that was pretty cool. If you didn't see that, watch again, because it's going to happen again. Okay? All right, we're going to give him one more shot. Oh, that time he got it. We won't interrupt his dinner. We'll give him a moment. So kids, chameleons have a ballistic tongue. Now, what does that mean? He can fire his tongue right out of his mouth. I can't do that. Not quite like he does, right? He can shoot his mouth or his tongue out of his mouth. He's got a suction cup at the end of it, and he grabs onto the cricket, pulls it right back in his mouth. Now look, is he being mean to the cricket? Of course not. And if a snake was sneaking up behind him and ate him, is that because snakes are mean? No, it's not because snakes are bad. It's because snakes can't go to the grocery store to buy their food. Chameleons can't go to the grocery store to buy their food. We do, right? But the animals have to find it or catch it for themselves. So this creature would eat insects, which some people say is gross, but I don't think that's nice. I think you might agree. If he eats bugs, is that gross for him? No, it's normal for him, right? So kids, this is Nasibe. Nasibe is a chameleon from the island of Madagascar. And if you ever saw the movie Madagascar, you know that the animals on the island of Madagascar all have something in common. They like to move it, move it. They like to, wait a second, that's not from the island of Madagascar. That's from the movie Madagascar. The next animal also would live on the island of Madagascar. Give me a second. We're going to put our chameleon right up here. My chameleon does not get to go free. Nasibe may be named after a little island off the coast of the big island called Madagascar, but he's not going to get to go home. He's stuck. This is home. And kids, it was hard enough for me to buy one house. Guess what I had to do? I had to buy two houses, one for myself and for Rebecca, and one for the animals. Excuse me for 1 second. It's been a long day. So kids, the next one that I'd like to share with you is a type of a frog. I picked an amphibian to represent Animal Embassy. Now, amphibians, you guys might know, most of them are born in the water, right? Amphibian, as most people do not know, actually means of two worlds. Makes sense, right? Because if you know about amphibians, you know that most amphibians are born where? If you're thinking that most amphibians are born underwater, you are correct. And do you know that when this frog was born, and by the way, this is called the tomato frog, and she should be on the island of Madagascar. Now, when she was born, do you know what? She could swim better than she can today. And she's a grown-up now. Usually with us, we swim better as we grow up, right? Why do baby frogs swim better than grown-up frogs? Because baby frogs have a tail, don't they? Baby frogs have a tail, and then they lose their tail. But baby frogs also have an amazing second tail, and metamorphosis is part of it. Their life cycle would be their second tail, right? Because our tail, boys and girls, starts when we're born. And it doesn't really end, ever. For many of us, when we grow up, we get married, we have kids. The tale continues, right? Because our tale, boys and girls, is our story. Every one of us has a story to tell. Someday, I'd like to have some time to write. I love to read. Raise your hand if you love to read. I absolutely love to read, but I'm so busy, kids, because I've got close to 100 animals to take care of. So I don't have a lot of time to read these days. I think before I get time to do much reading, I think I'm probably going to do some writing. I have books that are stuck inside my head. I've got books that are trapped inside my brain. I want to release those books. But to be able to release those books, do you know what I'm going to need to do? I'm going to need to have some time so that I can write. Because I want you kids to get to read my books. I want you kids to get to read about my adventures. Now give me just a second here. I want to show you guys a different type of frog. This is a frog that may look familiar to some of you because this frog is from Connecticut, and so am I. I grew up in Darien, Connecticut. This is a gray tree frog. Kids, one of my earliest memories was of me helping a salamander to cross the road. I was 3 years old, and I still remember that. When I was a little kid, I also remember finding a gray tree frog, but it was green. Why would a gray tree frog be green? Because, kids, some frogs can actually change their color. And when gray tree frogs first change from tadpoles to frogs, oftentimes they are green. Oh, get back here, you. The frog is now on the camera. Come here, you. Hold on a second here. Now, how is the frog holding on? This frog has something called suction cups on his fingers and on his toes. And with those suction cups, this frog can stick, which allows this frog to climb. So kids, you met two different types of frogs today. Both of them had tails when they were babies, but they lost their tails as they grew up and changed. So you met a tomato frog, whose name, by the way, is Ketchup, and a gray tree frog, whose name is Forest. Why did we name the tomato frog Ketchup? Because it's kind of cute. And why did we name the gray tree frog Forest? Because, kids, I wish that this frog could be in the forest. And you know what? I'm not going to have to wish that forever, because that frog is going back to nature where it belongs. Kids, I don't want to take animals from nature anymore, but sometimes people bring me frogs that they found in nature, and then I get them back. So somebody found that gray tree frog crossing the road. And why did the gray tree frog cross the road? Well, to get to the other side, of course. So tree frogs have suction cups on their fingers and toes. This is a tree frog that would live all the way over in Australia. I'd like to go there someday. Raise your hand if you'd like to go to Australia someday. Kids, I love to explore. So I travel as much as I can. I travel to different parts of the world. I don't want to just learn about animals. I also want to learn about people, guys, because people are very interesting, right? And we come from lots of different places, and people, like frogs, can be very different from each other, right? When I went to India for one of my adventures, I saw this tiger. I'm sorry about that glare. How can I get it? There you go. Does she look like she was happy to see me? No way. Kids, I took that picture, and I took that picture from a good distance, because if we're in nature, should we get very close to the animals, or should we give them their space? Of course, we should give them their space. And if we find animals in nature, should we take them from their home, or should we leave them where they belong? We should absolutely leave them where they belong. Kids, I was going to go to Guyana before. Remember when we had to stay home so that we didn't get sick and so that we helped to keep everybody safe? Remember that time? We'll never probably forget it, most of us, unless you were very young. I've never been through anything like that in my life. And you know what? When that happened, when we weren't allowed to leave the house for a while, I was supposed to be going far, far away to a place called Guyana. Can everybody say Guyana? Can everybody say Rupununi? Now, I'm not making these places up. Guyana is a country in South America, and the Rupununi is a very special habitat. It's a wetland in South America, like a place called the Florida Everglades. And another place that I visited in Brazil called the Pantanal. In Guyana, there's a type of a creature called the dwarf caiman. Now, you guys probably know your fairy tales. Can anybody think of a fairy tale that has dwarfs? Or how about a fairy tale that has giants? Do you know that dwarfs and giants are not just in fairy tales? Of course, you probably know. What was that one? There was that one about, I think it was Elsa and the Seven Dwarfs. No. Hold on. Mary Poppins. No, it wasn't Mary Poppins. Moana and this. No, it wasn't Moana. I bet you're thinking it was Snow White. And you're right. It was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. This is a dwarf caiman. Dwarfs are the smallest of their kind. Giants are the biggest of their kind. Now, dwarf caimans, like tadpoles, they use their tail to help them to swim. But do you know what? Caimans are in the crocodilian family, which you guys probably know about alligators and crocodiles. This is their cousin. But this is their smaller cousin, the dwarf caiman. There are some very big kinds of caimans. When I went looking for the jaguars down in Brazil, I saw black caimans. They're really big. So do you think I went swimming with the black caimans? No way. When I was in Africa, I saw giant crocodiles. The zebras didn't even want to go in the river. So do you think I went swimming with the giant crocodiles in Africa? That'd be a pretty bad idea, right? Kids, we want to be safe. We want to be careful. And if we're in nature, we have to understand that we're also in their home, right? Our habitat is their habitat. We share our habitat with a lot of what I like to call our wild neighbors, and some of them, we better leave them alone, right? So kids, caimans can use their tail for swimming, but caimans can also use their tails for whacking. And if you notice, Eamon, which is his name, who is a caiman, which rhymes, Eamon's not whacking me. He's not crying for his mama. He's not opening his mouth to try to bite me. He's not trying to get away from me. Do you know why? Because he's not afraid of me. Eamon the caiman, he thinks that I am his mother. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but Mr. Chris, you're not a girl. I know. I'm also not a reptile, right? I'm also not a crocodilian. I'm also not a caiman. But if this little animal thinks that I'm his mother, I must be doing something right, and I must be the right man for the job. So kids, I know I'm not his mother. You know I'm not his mother, but if he thinks that I am his mother, I must be doing a good job of taking care of him. And kids, who do you think is going to love my animals the most? Me. Who's going to keep my animals healthy? Me. Who's going to keep my animals safe? Me. Who does that for you? Not me. Parents, right? So who's going to be a good parent to Eamon the caiman? And why do I say it like that? Because in Guyana, a lot of people speak English, but they speak it with a really cool accent. And I bet some of you might know somebody that speaks with a really cool accent too. I've got friends in Bridgeport from Jamaica. And in Jamaica, they've got a cool accent too. And I think it sounds a bit like some of the folks in Guyana. So everybody say, Eamon. Everybody say, caiman. So guys, Eamon is a caiman. Let's see who's next. So some animals use their tails for swimming, like tadpoles and caimans, alligators and crocodiles. Some animals use their tails for holding on so they don't fall out of the trees. Because look, if this guy were to fall from the trees, he could break his bones. He's got bones in his body, just like me and you, right? So if you were to fall out of a tree, you could break your bones, and so could he. So why does he have a tail? It helps to keep him safe, which helps to keep him alive. And since these animals are all stuck with me, who's going to make sure that they're safe and alive? That's my job, just like it's the job of parents to do that for kids. So I've got another one that has an even longer tail, and he's kind of like my Lorax. I bet some of you guys know the story of the Lorax. Raise your hand if you know that story. It's one of my favorite stories of all time. In the story about the Lorax, there's a villain, and that would be the Onceler. And why is the Onceler the villain? Well, because the Onceler comes to the forest and cuts down how many trees? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? No. All of the trees. That's what the Onceler did. Now look, I know that the Lorax is a cartoon. It's a book. I love both. But look, Solomon went through this in real life. You remember in the book, The Lorax, or the movie, the brown barbaloots had to leave, the swanee swans had to leave, the fish had to leave, the air got dirty, the water got dirty, because trees are so important, kids. We can't cut all the trees down. Hey, look, sometimes we've got to cut down one tree, right? If a tree's in a dangerous place and it might fall on the house, well, you got to take it down for safety's sake, right? If a tree might fall on the playground where the kids are playing, well, hey, we might have to take down that tree for safety's sake. If a tree might fall on the school because it's really old and it's going to fall during the next storm, well, we might have to take that tree down for safety's sake. But kids, when they went to Solomon's Island, which is all the way on the other side of the planet, where Solomon Island prehensile-tailed skinks should live, which would be on the Solomon Islands. And why do they call him a prehensile-tailed skink? Because he's got a tail like a monkey. And what do we call that kind of tail? A prehensile tail. So we also could call him a monkey-tailed skink, which is easier for a lot of people to remember than Solomon Island prehensile-tailed skink. But once you've learned about him, you might remember that. He's a skink. He's not a chameleon. He's not an iguana. He's not a gecko. And by the way, that's not a gecko either. Some kids think that's a gecko. Some kids think that's a gecko. Gecko sells insurance. Geckos are lizards. This is a lizard, but he's not a gecko. He's certainly not a gecko. He's a skink. S-K-I-N-K, skink. Rhymes with stink. But my skink does not stink. He's a vegetarian. Vegetarians are typically not very stinky. He eats only fruits and vegetables, no meat whatsoever. In our world, boys and girls, we would call somebody like that a vegetarian. And somebody like that doesn't eat anything that comes from any animal actually would be called a vegan. But in nature, we would call that an herbivore. Raise your hand if you knew that word. Everybody say carnivore. Carne in Spanish means what? Meat. So if you're a carnivore, you're a meat eater. If you're an herbivore, you're a plant eater. If you're an omnivore, which a lot of people are, you would eat both, right? This guy's a strict vegetarian. Some people make that choice. Did he make that choice, or was he born to be a vegetarian? He was born a vegetarian. He doesn't get to make choices like that. And he didn't get to make a choice when they took him from his island and sent him to the United States of America. And this is where his second tale is sad. Kids, they cut down the whole forest. They didn't just take one tree, they cut down the whole forest so they could sell the wood that came from those trees. But what did they take when they took all that wood? They took his home, they took his habitat, and they took him away from his family. Kids, Solomon Island prehensile-tailed skinks, which you could call a monkey-tailed skink, they live with their families. They're reptiles, but they don't lay eggs like most reptiles do. So he's not like the others. And you know what? That's what my mother said about me when I was a little boy. She said, Christopher, you're not like the others. And you know why she told me that? Because other kids were making fun of me. They said that I was weird. They said that I was gross. And do you know why they said that I was weird and gross? Because I loved all animals. Because I loved frogs. Because I loved salamanders, because I love toads and snakes and bats and mice and bunny rabbits and guinea pigs too. Because which animals do I love? All of them. And kids, I want to help you to do the same thing. Too many grown-ups, they grew up to be afraid of animals, and then they might say they don't like them. We should love life. Life is beautiful, but not all animals are beautiful for the same reason, because guess what? They're not all the same. Everybody is different. You're different. I'm different, but you're like me, right? And I'm like you because we're the same kind. We're humans, right? And as humans, I want us all to appreciate that each animal is important, each animal is unique, each animal is special, and each animal is important to their community just like you are, kids. And each one of us can help the environment that we live in. Each one of us can help to make our communities better. And Solomon is helping me to help people to want to do that. So since he's kind of like my Lorax, and the Lorax speaks for the trees, that's what Solomon does with me. We're encouraging kids to plant flowers, plant trees, help the birds, help the bees. I like that. That rhymes too. Say it with me. Plant flowers, plant trees. Let's help the birds and the bees. And because they help us, gosh, let's help them too. Do you know, I went to Mexico a few years ago on one of my big adventures, and I went up into the mountains in Mexico. I went to a place called Michoacan. And when I went to Michoacan, I was looking for monarch butterflies. And kids, I found monarch butterflies. I found thousands of them. I think I might have even seen millions of them. And do you know what those monarch butterflies had? Colors to tell everybody to leave them alone. Because monarch butterflies are actually poisonous, right? Are they poisonous because they're mean? Are they poisonous because they're bad? Or are they poisonous for protection? Kids, they've got poison for protection, just like my porcupine quillium has quills for protection. Everybody needs to have some way to protect themselves, and some animals do it with color, like the red-eyed tree frog. Kids, these animals have those beautiful colors because they're warning the other animals to leave them alone. When animals have colors like that, it is a warning that they are poisonous. But guess what? Those frogs aren't poisonous. The tomato frog was poisonous. And you might think, but Mr. Chris, you held the tomato frog. Do you know why I was able to hold that tomato frog and not get poisoned? Because it's not poisonous to touch. It's not poisonous to hold. But if I was to eat the tomato frog, would that be poisonous? Yes. If I was to lick the tomato frog, would that be poisonous? Yes. So guess what I'm not going to do? I'm not going to lick the tomato frog. I'm not going to eat the tomato frog. Just because they call it a tomato frog doesn't mean it tastes like a tomato. So kids, I got a couple more animals that I'd like to share with you before we're finished tonight. And I know we started a little bit late, and I'm sorry about that, but we were experiencing technical difficulties. So I'm happy that some of you were able to stick around. I hope you're enjoying the program. I got some more to share with you before we're done. So the next one I want to share with you is a white chinchilla. Very unique, very unusual. And in nature, you're not going to find a white chinchilla. You know why? Because the rocks are gray. So think about this, kids. I want you guys to think a little bit. Why do you think a white chinchilla would have a problem if they were living in nature where they belong? Remember what I said, the rocks way up in the mountains where they belong are gray. Chinchillas are not big animals like a bear. They don't have big claws. They don't have big teeth. They don't have poison. They don't have colors to tell everybody to leave them alone like the red-eyed tree frogs, which, by the way, are not poisonous, but they look like they are. Whereas the tomato frog is poisonous and has colors that tell the other animals, you better leave me alone. With the red-eyed tree frogs, it's a trick. With a white chinchilla, the color that they have is a problem for them in the wild, as some of you might have already figured out, because I mentioned to you that the rocks way up in the mountains where they live are gray. So if the chinchilla is born white, this could be a problem. And this chinchilla was born white. She has a twin that was also born white. So her name is Olivia, because I wish that Olivia could be living in the mountains of a place called Bolivia. Now, kids, I'm sure that many of you don't know where Bolivia is. You could look it up on a map. Do you think chinchillas know how to read a map? Certainly not. Do you think chinchillas vote for the president? No, they do not. Do you think chinchillas have a GPS in their car? Of course they don't. They don't even have a car. And how would they drive it if they did? They'd have to have a chauffeur. Kids, chinchillas, they don't know where Argentina is. But that's where they belong. 4 countries, Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, and Peru. You might know people from those places. She's never been there, but I wish that she could have been born free. But you know what? If she was born free and she was this color, she would have a big problem. No camouflage. Raise your hand if that's what you were thinking. She doesn't have the color that would give her her camouflage. But does she have a tail? Yes, she does. And part of her tail, kids, is that she was born with people. That's the second tail. Every one of my animals has a story, just like every one of you has a story. Remember poor Sydney the parrot, stuck in a cage for the first 5 years of his life, like he was in prison for having done something wrong. But did he do anything wrong? No, he didn't do anything wrong, but he was locked up in a cage for 5 years. That's a sad part of his tale, isn't it? But here's the happy part. He lives with us now. This building that you're seeing me in right now, I bought for these animals, kids. It was hard enough for me to buy one house. I had to buy two. And as you kids get older, you'll understand a little bit more about why it's hard to buy a house. Nobody's going to give me a house. I had to buy it. And how many houses did I buy? Two. One for me and Rebecca, as I mentioned earlier, and one for all of the animals. I have animals living downstairs. I have animals living upstairs. I have about 100 different animals. Are they living in my house? Yes, because this is my house, because I bought it for them. But is this where I live, or do I live next door? I live next door. I do have one animal that spends a lot of time in the house, and his name is Kuni Kuni. And Kuni Kuni is a Kuni Kuni. And you might not know what a Kuni Kuni is, but if you saw the movie Moana, you know something about Kuni Kunis. Everybody say Pua. If you remember the movie Moana, you know what a Kuni Kuni is, because Pua is a Kuni Kuni. Kuni Kunis are the pig of the Maori people from New Zealand. Kuni Kuni lives on my farm. I call it Flying Pig Farm. Kuni Kuni's got a curly tail. I've got a couple farm animals that live here that people would recognize as farm animals. Hannah the chicken is one of them. Kuni Kuni is another one. We have a donkey, but I like to say donkey. Can everybody say donkey? I bet you guys know Shrek. Shrek was I think, one of my favorite cartoon movies, if I can be honest with you. And I love the way he says donkey. So, kids, we have a donkey that lives here. We have a horse that lives here. We have a chicken. We have a pig. Those are farm animals, right? But do you know where the tail of the chicken begins? Well, the tail of the chicken begins right there, right? I'm just saying, right? That's where the tail begins for everybody. But I'm talking about the other tail, the story of the chicken. Kids, Kuni Kuni pigs come from the island of New Zealand. They're the pig of the Maori people. If you remember Maui, Maui is a Maori warrior. The Maori people are from New Zealand. Kuni Kuni pigs got to New Zealand on whaling ships, but they don't know where Kuni Kuni pigs came from before that. And if you want to meet Kuni Kuni, go to our Instagram page, go to the Animal Embassy Facebook page, and you'll get to meet Kuni Kuni, Quilliam the porcupine, Dune the fennec fox, and he's got a cute tail too. We just adopted our second fennec fox this past weekend from the zoo in Illinois called the Niabi Zoo. I'm very proud that they adopted a fox to us. He's on loan to us, so they trust us that much that we're going to be taking care of that guy. He'll probably spend his whole life here. We hope so. Kids, we have a tremendous number of animals to take care of. Henna is one. And do you think I love her? I sure do. And when I went to India, I learned some things about chickens that I never knew. You remember that picture of the tiger that I showed you? I found a wild chicken in India. But they don't call them wild chickens. They call them jungle fowl. But kids, do you know what? If you have a dog, dogs originally came from wolves, which come from the wild. Chickens originally came from jungle fowl, which is a wild chicken. Think about this. When we normally think of a chicken, we think of pigs, we think of cows, we think of horses, we think of farm animals. But where did pigs come from originally? Where did chickens come from originally? I know that some of them for sure started off in India many, many, many years ago. And they don't look like they used to because we've changed them. People have changed a lot of animals over time. But all animals originally came from where, boys and girls? From the wild, from their natural habitats. So kids, we're getting close to the end here. I've got about 4 more minutes before 8 o'clock, and I'm sure some of you guys have to brush your teeth and go to bed. So I don't want to keep you up too late. But I would like to maybe show you one more animal if you guys would like to see one more. So this next one is named Verde. Now you guys might know a book called Verde. I know that the folks at the Bridgeport Library probably know this book. If you know the book Stella Luna, I absolutely love that book. A bat falls into a nest with some baby birds, and the mama bird knows it's not her baby, but she loves it and takes good care of that baby. I love that story. Kids, I adopted all of these animals. They're now part of my family. I created Animal Embassy. Nobody gave me the idea. And Rebecca and I don't have kids. Not kids like you kids, but is Henna kind of like my kid? Is Sydney the parrot kind of like my kid? Kuni Kuni the piggy? Quilliam the porcupine? Dune the little fennec fox? Kids, this is my family. I love all of these animals. And if you guys have pets, I hope that you'll see it the way that we do over here. If you have a pet, you're the parent to your pet. I want you kids to understand that. You know what parents do for kids, so be the parent to your pet. And if you're being the parent to your pet, you're not even going to call it your pet. It's part of your family. So kids, your dog is part of your family. Your cat is part of your family. Your goldfish is part of your family. That's the way we see it, and I would love for you guys to see it the same way, because it's not just like the other things that you have. It's not a toy. It's not a book. It's not a phone. It's not a computer. It's a life. And if we bring a life into our life, let's love it and take care of it. Let's cherish that life. Boys and girls, the next one I want to share with you, the last one that we're going to see tonight, is a very beautiful animal. Her name is Verde. And if you know the books like Stella Luna and Penduli, you might know the book Verde, which is about a python, a baby python who's born yellow, hatches from its egg and is yellow with like purple markings. Well, the Verde that you're about to meet with me right now, same thing. When that baby was born, she was yellow. And she thought that all the grown-ups were boring. Kids, I'm here to tell you that not all grown-ups are boring. And just because you're a grown-up doesn't mean you're boring. Kids, we grown-ups know how to have some fun too. And you can pick your job. And kids, I've got a very exciting job. I'm never bored at my job. But I've got about 100 different animals to take care of, and I travel all over the world so I can learn about animals and my own kind. And kids, we're not plants, we're animals. And let's do what we can do to help the world to be a better place. Do you know that snakes eat mice and rats? Mice and rats carry ticks and fleas. Ticks and fleas can carry disease. So if snakes are eating mice and rats can carry ticks and fleas can carry disease, people that say that they don't like snakes, maybe they just need to learn a little bit more about them. And if they learn that rhyme that I just taught you guys, which you guys can teach to lots of people if you remember it, and it's not hard to remember, so we'll say it again, and maybe you guys can say it with me. You ready? Snakes eat mice and rats. Mice and rats carry ticks and fleas. Ticks and fleas can carry disease. So if that's true, and it is, that means that snakes are actually helping us. Do you know spiders do too? And I can't tell you how many people I've heard say mean things about spiders. I can't tell you how many people I've heard say mean things about snakes. I want to help you kids to grow up so that you won't say mean things about an animal who didn't even choose to be the way that they are. We get to make some choices, kids. You guys can come up with a goal. What would you like to be? What would you like to do? Kids, I always wanted to work with animals. I always wanted to help the earth to be a better place. So my goal is to change the world. My goal is to make it a better, safer place for everybody, animals, plants, and people. My goal is to help people so that they won't say mean things about each other and they won't say mean things about animals. Kids said that I was weird. They said that I was gross. And why? Because I loved all animals. It does not make me gross because I love life, that's for sure. But it does make me different. But I don't want to be different in this way. I want to help people to see the world and life the way I do. Life is beautiful, life is precious, and I want to help people to see that too, because I want to help people to protect and preserve all life. And if we recognize that all life is beautiful, or at the very least that all life is precious and all life is important, then we might just do a good job of taking care of the whole planet, because every animal is important to their community, just like every one of you children is important to yours. And every one of you is important to me. Even if I don't know you, I care about you. I care about my own kind. If I can care about this snake, if I can care about this chicken, if I can care about my frogs, my spiders, my scorpions, my turtles, I can certainly care about my own kind, and I do. So I hope that all of you will join me in my effort to make the world a better place. And you know where we can start? In each one of our houses, by being kind to each other, by being kind to the animals in our lives, and by not saying mean things about somebody for being different. We get to make some choices, kids. Nobody asked a snake if it wanted to be a snake. Nobody asked a spider if it wanted to be a spider. Nobody asked them how many arms and legs they want to have. So should we be saying mean things about them? No. And you know what? I don't hear too many kids saying mean things about animals, which tells me that people are changing. I know it's possible. And I know we can all change the world because, kids, do you know when you changed the world for the first time? On the day you were born. And you didn't have to work very hard on that day. But if we work hard, I know that together we can make the world a better place. So raise your hand if you'd like to help me to do that. Cool. Raise your hand if you think I can change the world. I know I can. I know you can. And I know we can do it better together. Thank you very much to the Bridgeport Library. Thank you to all of you who were patient while I was experiencing technical difficulties. I'm an animal guy, not a tech guy. I've got 2 tech people that help me, and they helped me to get on today because I was having some trouble. So thank you for your patience. Thank you, Bridgeport Library. We love working with you and all the other libraries that we work with. Kids, don't forget to read and be the author of your own tale, because everybody's got a tale. And that tale started when you were born, and it keeps on growing as you do. But kids, you've got some control over your tale. Think about what do you want to be. Think about what do you want to do, and be the author of your own tale. Thank you for joining me for A Tale of Two Tales. Until next time, keep growing that tale. Bye, guys. Take care, everybody. Thank you, Bridgeport Library. Bye, everybody.